Well, I might look like Tony today.
This is the new Micah or his
Yeah,
brother.
there we go.
Dang, Micah.
Yeah, a little different. Something I haven't seen in 20 years, and something you guys have probably never seen. But welcome everybody. I don't know how I got to be the new chair, but so be it. So welcome, Micah Chappelle. I am the code official representative on the State Building Code Council. So this is the BFP committee, and we'll go, I guess, through the council members for introductions, and after that we'll do roll call, and then after that, well, let's go through roll call, then we'll go through the introductions of SBCC staff, and then any members of the public who would like to be recognized. So if we do a roll call, that'd be great.
Yes. So for chair, I got Micah is here. Tony Doan. Todd Bayruther.
Here.
Damon Doyle. Craig Holt. And Roger Herringo.
I am here. Excuse me, I am here.
Gotcha. So with that, we are one shy of a quorum at the moment.
Well, bummer. So why don't we go ahead and have staff introduce themselves, and then we'll ask anybody from the public that would like to be recognized to introduce, unmute themselves and introduce, and then maybe we'll have a quorum by then. We'll see. Go ahead, staff, please.
Well, my name is Dustin Kerb. I'm a State Building Code Council staff member, and currently I'm in charge of provisions for the IBC, IEBC, IFC, IRC, IPC, no, UPC, sorry, and the WUI code. We do have some new staff scheduled to come on board, and we'll be dividing up that a little bit with them. And then I'll pass it on to Krista.
I'm Krista Broxma, State Building Code Council staff, primarily energy code.
Stan Bumble, the State Building Code Council Managing Director.
Let's see.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that was it for today. All right. Are there any members of the public who would like to be? That's okay. Any members of the public who would like to be recognized, please raise your hand, I think, so we can unmute you or recognize you. That'd be the virtual hand, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, my name's Tom Handy. I'm newly appointed to the Building Code Council from Whitman County.
Excellent. And which group do you represent on the council, Tom?
The representative from Wasatch Association of Counties.
Awesome.
I'm a commissioner in Whitman County.
Great, welcome. Chris? Chris Edmark, we're not hearing you. If you want to unmute and maybe try again. Maybe it's just my audio.
He was muted,
All
he's
right,
unmuted
Chris.
now. But
we'll try to come back to you, Chris. Thank you for being here. Andrea?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Andrea Smith here on behalf of the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Thanks, Andrea. Sean?
Good afternoon, Sean Angley here, City of Bellingham building official, and I'm just sitting in for item number 4. If I can request for the info for IBC section 3203.3, and just if I could provide any additional information once you guys get to that on your agenda, I'm available.
Thanks. All right, any other members of the public would like to be recognized? Okay,
Hi, Darren McGilvray, Building Plans Examiner, City of Bellingham. I'm here with Sean Angeli. We're discussing the projections for the public right of way. So we're here for item number 4 as well.
This is Chris Edmark with Thurston County. I'm just listening in.
all right, thank you, welcome. All right. Seeing no more hands and moving forward, unfortunately, we do not have a quorum, so we cannot do item 2 or 3 on the agenda as of yet. So that would mean we would move into item 4, if that's my correct understanding. With that, if we wouldn't mind going, go ahead.
Order, if I can say something.
Sure.
What if we start with agenda item 5, which doesn't need a vote? It's just a staff report that we will explain what we're doing with these 2 off-cycle rules.
I like that suggestion, and since we don't have a quorum, we won't vote on it. So go right ahead and move on to item number 5. Thanks, Dorian.
All righty, so we got the modify the definition and provisions of childcare, family and home in the 2021 IBC and 2021 IRC. This is a little bit, I should have corrected this, and it should also include the 2021 IFC. So we had a meeting recently with the technical advisory group and the stakeholders, and I have some draft language here. The current next item up for action from the work group working on this is to come back and give a couple more options to the tag on increasing the number from 12 to 16 allowed within a residence and still remaining in the IRC provisions. So currently we kind of have some disagreement between residential fire systems and NFPA 72 fire systems and sprinklers versus no sprinklers in these increases. So we're currently scheduling another meeting with the work group to kind of come up with some of these alternatives that might be attractive to both the technical advisory group members and the stakeholders within the Department of Children, Youth and Family, who are the proponents of this change. And currently, that's where we're at, and we've been working pretty hard on this one. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer any comments, questions, or concerns.
Would that also be open to members of the public, Dustin, for questions?
Yes, that is, well, if they would like to answer or ask questions from the public, yes, that would be as well. I'm happy to chat on that one.
Excellent. So we'd open the floor for a few moments. Folks want to again try to raise their virtual hand, we will try to identify you. We got Roger, please.
Yeah, Dustin, if you can, both for my clarification, as well as everybody on the call, what are the next steps? So the tag is working on this. Is there an assumption that potentially in a month from now or something like that, the tag will come to an agreement and then bring that to the BFP committee prior to it going to the council?
Yes, I would, well, without having any other scheduled BFP committee meetings, I believe that the bring it to the tag, hopefully that the tag approves it or approves it to be moved to the next step, whether they decide it's to be the BFP committee, which would be just the next step up, or to forward it direct to the council. I would probably yield to Stoyan on that one, which one would be the most appropriate. I feel that probably coming through the BFP committee would be just the next step up and get more input on that. But the intent is to get this to we've got CR 101 filed on this, and then we are looking to take that language to a CR 102 status, which would open the public comment period and try to get this thing moved down the road.
We have additional step with this off-cycle rule, because we have a work group that is trying to agree on a language. And then after we have the language, the proposed language, it needs approval. Well, not really approval, but it should be reviewed by the technical advisory group. And as Dustin said, the next step is the a BFP committee. So the BFP committee can review it and end up with a recommendation, or can refer it directly to the council. It's up to the BFP committee how this task will be considered.
Okay, any additional questions or thoughts? Great, we'll move on to the next item in that section.
And that is the, oh, might close some stuff out on accident, but we've got the R4 adoption. Moving forward, we have CR 101 filed. We've just recently moved to the CR 102 or 102 stage, where we have already had approval from the IFC and I believe the IBC tags for adoption of R4 provisions with some modifications. I thought I had up here the shoot. Here, let me open up. I got the CR 102 here on the screen coming up in just a second. And Stoyan's been the main kind of interaction with that one. So I think that I don't have a whole lot more to add. If Stoyan has something he'd like to add, I can navigate some documents for him.
The CR 102 is filed with the proposal for the building code. We have a hearing on 28, I think it was June 28. It's June 28 because this was the earliest date we were able to use based on the APA provisions. And after the hearing, we will need to schedule a special council meeting, or the other option is the council meeting in September, but we can discuss this further. We have modifications to the fire code, but we will do the fire code with expedite rulemaking because for consistency with the building code. We're moving on this one. Unfortunately, because of the session, we're a couple weeks behind the initial schedule, but we're moving.
Stoyan, can you let us know what hearing you are implying? Is that, say, SBCC meeting or a state meeting somewhere outside SBCC?
Well, we are required to have public hearing, and then the SBCC needs to have a work session and a vote directing staff to file the CR 103. We can do that. This is an easy proposal. It's not too controversial, so we can do the work session and the vote for the CR 103 at the same meeting.
Okay, so that's a public comment hearing through the SBCC. Was just curious because I see that on the SBCC calendar for June, and you indicated that's the 28th of June. That'd be correct?
Well, it's not scheduled yet because I need to. The plan was to discuss this with the council members at the meeting on Friday, but I'm not sure if I will succeed on that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
This is the standard procedure. It's nothing new.
Certainly, I just wanted, just didn't see it on the calendar. Wanted to make sure that I had heard you
It's not
correctly.
scheduled yet. It needs to be. Yeah, there are procedures for the special meetings as well. We don't have the date yet because we don't know if the council members will be available on June 30th. The first week of July is not good because of, everybody's taking vacation. So we will research this before we go with any date.
Thank you, Stoyan. Thank you, Dustin. Any questions or comments from the public or committee members on the proposal that Dustin's gone over? Excellent. You folks are really easy so far today. I like that. Okay. With that, excuse me. I didn't see anybody else pop on. I still don't think we have a quorum, unfortunately. But let's go ahead and I think move into item number 4. There is, it will be open for public comment. Unfortunately, if we don't have a quorum, there will be no action taken today. We would have to possibly look at moving that off to the full council without BFP action. So can we show item number 4, first bullet point, please?
Yes. And this is pretty much the same document we've viewed before in the past. If we want to make some changes to it, I'll bring up a Word document and work that on screen.
So with this one, the issue with going directly to the council members is that we did review this at the BFP committee meeting. The recommendation was for the council to make the decision. The council referred it back to the BFP. We didn't have a quorum the last time and we don't have quorum today. So if we go directly to the council, actually it's not a comment, it's like a question. I'm not sure how we can deal with this.
Okay, I don't have that answer either, but I'm sure we can at least go over the topic and make sure that the question is answered appropriately, even if no action's taken. I don't know what to do without a quorum, Stoyan.
Micah, this is Roger. If I can offer a suggestion or opinion, would it be possible because we don't have a quorum, is it possible for the BFP committee or those members of the BFP committee that are on the call to make our recommendation even though it is not official? And let the full council know those members attending suggest this action, but we did not, and make them all aware that we did not have a quorum. I'm a new member. I don't know if that's against our complete rules or not.
I don't have that answer. I'm not sure that we can. I think we can, of course, provide recommendations to the document and modifications and put both drafts forward to the full council and then let them decide. So I do think there's a path for that without saying, hey, here's our recommendation, but here's something, and Stoyan can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
It
Point.
wouldn't be a formal recommendation from the BFP committee again, because we don't have the quorum, but it will be a recommendation by council members of the BFP committee. One or more. We cannot have a vote, but
Right.
You know, the opinion is in the way you see it, and you can see. I think it was answer 3. Dustin, can you scroll down? You see option 1 and option 2, and we kept option 1 and option 2 because Dustin and I didn't agree on this. And again, I'm not a person who wants to override other opinions. The point of showing this option 1 and option 2 was to tell the council members that these decisions based on the model codes are a little bit more difficult compared to the state amendments, because with the state amendments, we have the rationale, we have everything. We know the intent, and with the model code, it's based on a personal opinion. So don't get surprised about this option 1 and option 2. It doesn't mean you need to approve option 1 and option 2 both. So any other opinions are welcome. It's again, it's a opinion for a section in the model code. It's not a state amendment.
Okay, thanks, Dwayne. Does that answer your question, Roger, I hope? So,
Yes, it does. And I guess I would ask for the proponents. I remember going through this at the last BFP meeting. If I'm assuming it's the proponents from the city of Bellingham could walk us through again. I think that's what my request would be.
I can agree with that request as well. So I think it's Sean and Darren, I believe you mentioned. And so Sean, if you've got a few minutes to give some more background and history and maybe a little more information on the project this pertains to, and if this is the appropriate opinion.
Sure,
Thanks,
yeah,
Sean.
yeah. Could you scroll you're sharing the screen, could you scroll up just a slightly up a little bit? Up a little bit more. So I think the 3202.3, that was the question that came up, is a floor, does it fit into these types of projections allowed between the encroachments between 8 feet and 15 feet? And I think that first answer, that's kind of the way we were leaning as well, because it's, the proposal is a floor that supports walls above. So it's floor area that projects in that zone between 8 and 15. So I'll let Darren, because this was the project that Darren was reviewing. So maybe if he has any additional insight or details that would be of benefit to the group, to go ahead and please share, Darren.
Sure. Well, in this case, I mean, we've seen a number of these buildings starting to pop up in pre-application meetings around here, and it's been approved in certain circumstances where the floor, so structural portion of the building, can project out across the property line into the public right of way below 15 feet. But in looking at this, I'm seeing that, reading the code, it appears that that is just architectural superficial features that are allowed to project below 15 feet. And so I'm just trying to find clarification on what the State Building Code Council feels about this. If structural items are allowed between 8 and 15 feet, structural being like floor or anything that provides support to the structure above. I'm feeling not, but I'm not. I'm getting pushback from the design community in town here too.
Okay, thank you, Darren.
Mhm.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I was just going to say, if the question number 2, the screen we're looking at right now, that answers our question, I do believe, but I think the confusion comes from down below on the second question and answer that has to do with the the options. Again, we're just dealing about the 3202.3, not the 0.3 section. So this makes sense to us. I mean, from reading this, I would say it's my understanding that no structural members, either primary or secondary, aren't allowed to project within that 8 to 15 feet, but as applicable to 3202.3. But in this section, it says option 1 or option 2. We're kind of that, not does it lend to confusion, but it's for the projections above 15 feet where these options pertain to. So I think, and maybe you can clarify, but that's our understanding, as the SBCC is interpreting that as floors aren't, according to this document, that the SBCC does not feel that floors are allowed to be included in those projection types.
If I can clarify one more time, it's not the SBCC, it's was developed by the SBCC staff, and again, we took into consideration the ICC codes and commentary, and we researched a little bit. whatever was available on the ICC's website. And you see option 1 and option 2 again, because Dustin and I didn't agree on that. And I was trying to show that it's a model code, it's based on personal opinion and personal interpretations. If it gets to the council, I don't know what the decision would be, but it's still a draft document that is not even close to finalizing.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, if we can provide any other information that might be beneficial to, to the completion of this interpretation, by all means, please ask.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of got a question about, is there any discussion anywhere in the code with how far something goes out? Whether it's between 8 or 15 feet or wherever. I mean, because it would kind of make a difference in my mind, how far it might stick out over the right of way, especially above 15 feet.
Yep, if I can chime in, 3202.3.1 gives a dimension of 2/3. It says, let's see, awnings, canopies, marquees, and signs shall be constructed so as to support applicable loads as specified in chapter 16. Awnings, canopies, marquees, and signs with less than 15 feet of clearance above the sidewalk shall now extend into or occupy more than 2/3 the width of the sidewalk measured from the building. And then it goes on to say stanchions or columns that support awnings, canopies, marquees, and signs shall be located not less than 2 feet in from the curb line. So generally, a sidewalk is here, at least here in Bellingham, is about 5 feet wide, could be more, but it's generally no less than 5 feet. And then the curb and gutter is another 18 inches beyond that.
Okay, thank you, Sean. John, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, just to add to that, the next section limits windows, balconies, other things to maximum 4 feet as well. And depending how high you are above 8 feet, you start at a certain width, and then you can add an inch for every foot you're above 8 foot up to 4 feet of total projection into that. I guess I just want to throw in here. Presumably when this goes out, option 1 or option 2, one of those, it'll come out with only one of those, because otherwise it just adds confusion. But I guess I would question a little bit whether or not the first answer might cause a little bit of confusion when it talks about exterior walls, only because 3203.3.2 talks about windows. You can't have windows without an exterior wall. So how does this work, right? It allows windows as part of your encroachment. So, but you don't have windows, standalone windows, right? They're in an exterior wall usually. So I just wonder if that's going to cause a little confusion or a conflict with the code.
I think the distinction with the windows, though, is that bay oriel windows that are applied to the exterior wall, that's more of a superficial item than if it's the floor projecting out beyond the property line than supporting walls above. So I think that's where the distinction is that we're trying to draw in this case, because in the particular circumstance that we have, it is that is windows, but it's the entire floor sticks out 2 feet beyond the property line, and then it's supporting walls and floors up above that. So we're looking for clarification about structural items rather than a bay window that's applied to the exterior of the building.
Well, the bay, if you take your classic San Francisco bay window, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's framed. It's not a tack-on thing. It's framed into the wall, but it doesn't necessarily have a floor. The floor doesn't go out, but you still can have the same loads on it, right? It can be a window bench, can be almost anything, right? So what's the distinction, I guess, is that it would be my question. I more or less mostly agree with what's being said. I'm just wondering if it's going to cause a little conflict and confusion.
Yeah, I believe Seattle goes on to say in their end of the public works side of things, where it's the portions of the building that can project are supported by the structure, like they're attached to the building, and that's where the structural support comes from, rather than the structure projecting over the public way and supporting the construction above that. So it's the structural members that the distinction is made, that I'm understanding.
Yeah. Well, in Seattle, the public works folks own the public way. So building code doesn't really govern there.
Okay. Interesting.
And just for clarity, then projections, floor projections aren't allowed in Seattle, correct, John?
I don't remember. It's been a while, and I don't know what the current folks are doing. Micah might be able to weigh in on that a little bit, but if it came out, I would have deferred to the public works folks, because again, in Seattle, they own the right of way.
And it's clear that above 15 feet, the projections are unlimited. So it could be a floor that projects out. Then you're looking at fire separation distance from the nearest feature. So I don't have a problem with the floor projecting over 15 feet. It's just between the 8 and 15 feet that we're really looking at here.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a little different opinion on that, just because I don't believe a floor is necessarily a projection. But that's another conversation. Todd, go ahead. And hold on before I do that, Todd. Tom, does that kind of answer your questions? I think you had a question there, and there was some input, and I want to make sure you got answered.
It does, yes, thanks. And I think it's helpful to have it clarified that you're not concerned with what's above 15 feet necessarily. It's only between 8 and 15 in this particular instance, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. All right, Todd.
I appreciate the conversation. I have more questions than feedback, but I think I would like to hear a little bit more about the staff opinion, but I think John raises some really interesting structural questions, because I get less hung up on whether it's structural floor versus whatever, but from a structural engineering standpoint, we consider any exterior wall structure. It's just structural elements. So I don't know if that's John, your point of clarification there, but I think it's pretty valid that that's a structural wall dealing without a plane or even in plane loads. And I'd be curious to hear more from John and Roger on that, but also my request is, Stoyan and Dustin, can you maybe give us a little more of your commentary as if it was a staff report on what conflict you potentially have. Thank you.
And could I add to that? I've been looking for the commentary, and I unfortunately can't find the commentary. I've got the code up, and the commentary is referenced in option 2. And while I know that the commentary is not code, because it's relied on as part of option 2, I would like to understand what the commentary says about this some way. But then, yes, I agree with Todd. I would like to better understand if there are, contrary opinions in the staff. Why, have each person describe to us why they believe option 1 or option 2 is correct.
Okay, thanks, Roger. And looks like Dustin's trying to pull up some commentary for us. And just
So everything with its 4 diamonds to the left is commentary text, just for those who aren't familiar with the commentary book. And so we're dealing with 3202.3. And when we were drafting this opinion for the council review, a lot of the research went into not just the commentary on the section that is in question, but into this whole chapter 3202 as a whole. And so, we started encroachments 8 feet or more above grade. But we were trying to look at everything in here, and it's been a few weeks since I drafted this original opinion. And it was with looking at the whole section and thinking, how is this section drafted and what's the intent of the section? The provision to regulate variety of structure encroachments and projections into the public right of way, such as sidewalk, parking lot, or street. 3202 addresses encroachments on the street lot lines below grade, above grade, below 8 feet in height, and 8 feet or more above grade. Encroachments and projections have to be taken into consideration in addition to the means of egress, fire resistance, fire protection, and structural and material considerations. And the purpose of this chapter is to regulate projections and encroachments of structures into the public right of way. So, part of the talk is the line that we're projecting over a lot line or a property line, where we are dividing like an easement on the property that the right of way is contained within. And I believe there was some discussion at one point about who owns the airspace above property. And so I was of the opinion that, most of this stuff me and Stoyan agreed on for the answers to question 1 and 2. The question 3 kind of deals with, anywhere above the right of way. So it was my personal opinion, after reading the commentary in the code sections, that if we were on a jurisdiction owned public right of way, that anything should not project over those lines. And so option number 1 would be my interpretation, and option 2 would be Stoyan's interpretation of the readings here. And it was it takes a lot of looking into all the different words and reading the shalls and mays, and trying to put together a opinion that is rational and reasonable at the same time. And so I'll kind of tail off there and let Stoyan maybe add on to it.
And again, the reason for this option 1 and option 2 was not to confuse you, but just to show you that it's a model code and we rely on the available information, but it's subjective. It's subjective. We have 15 council members, and they may read it differently. So it doesn't mean option 1 is right or option 2 is right. We're just trying to say that we read this differently. That's all. I'm a very much opinionated person, but I'm not going to fight for this option 2. It just the way I read it at the moment and the way I understood when I was researching it.
Right. I guess if I could just chime in there, I think one of the questions is, why specify the types of projections or the allowable features that can extend out into the right of way? I think that by specifying that, it kind of leads to confusion, whereas, the 15 feet or above, it says, shall not be limited. Why wouldn't you do that between 8 feet and 15 feet?
When you read the commentary, because encroachments into a public right of way that are 15 feet or more above grade do not interfere with or impede the pedestrian or vehicle or traffic, and that's the important part. They are not regulated by the provisions of this chapter. This was one of the things that made me believe that if they are not regulated, then you can do whatever you want. And there was something else at the beginning of the chapter that I kind of make the connection, that the intent was not to regulate anything that's above 15 feet. And Dustin took a different approach. Dustin evaluated the specific, the main section, saying that, okay, because the main section is not applicable to the subsection, this is why he believed that option 1 is the correct option. But again, we were trying to show you that, you know, we are dealing with a limited amount of information, and this type of interpretation is subjective. That's all.
Yeah, I guess that comment wasn't geared towards, sorry, Storian, but that comment wasn't geared towards questioning your opinion. I was actually more or less wondering why 3202.3.1 specifies the types of projections, whereas they could have just said, you know, any projection is limited to 2/3 and the 4 feet, you know, no matter whether it was a floor projection or floor or any of those other more superficial items. And I think that's, you know, I just, it'd be nice to understand the intent of that section, how it came about, why specifying those particular building elements versus limiting some other types of building elements.
Unfortunately, we don't have this information. And that's going back to my point, you know, why I'm not going to defend my position here. It's because we are dealing with the limited information, and we couldn't figure out what the initial intent was. Our judgment is based on how we read the quote and commentary. And, you know, you may ask 10 people, they may give you 9 different opinions on that.
Right. Yeah.
If I might add in a little here, here's where the confusion kind of came in is the interpretation of architectural features. So if you look at 3202.3.2, which is encroachments 8 feet or more above grade, where the vertical clearance above grade to projecting windows, balconies, architectural features, or mechanical equipment is more than 8 feet. So architectural features was kind of the hang up here. What is an architectural feature? And then if you go up to 3202.2.2, architectural features, it says columns or pilasters, including bases and moldings, shall not project more than 12 inches. Belt courses, lintels, sills, architraves, pediments, and other similar architectural features shall not project more than 4 inches. So it kind of gives more definition to the term architectural feature in that section there. So I don't see that as being floors, structural portions of the building. These are features that are easier to repair, remove, replace, that sort of thing. So if, let's say, Public Works needed to replace a water main, they had to get their equipment underneath, and the equipment had to be, you know, below 15 feet, then it wouldn't infringe on their ability to do the work that they have. So without major damage to the building or you know, making it impossible to get underneath there. So and the architects that I've been speaking with are pushing back. They're saying floor is an architectural feature, but it's not clearly defined. It's not a defined term. It's more of an interpretation based on 3202.2.2.
If I want to just throw away my hat, so consider this Stoyan talking, not the managing director. If I have a request to research anything, let's say Washington State Amendment, so I go back trying to find when it was adopted and what is the rationale, what is the intent. If I find that, I may disagree with the language, but I have the intent and I have the rationale. And if Andrea asked me this question for the building industry, I'll say, okay, here is why it was adopted. So that's not my interpretation. This is the fact. This is the intent. We have it in the rulemaking documents. If I can't find it, I will say, well, I didn't find any rationale. This is when it was adopted. I don't know why it was adopted. Here is my personal opinion. So with the model code, this is what we're doing. We don't know the intent. we're judging by a personal opinion. And, my initial recommendation for the council was not to take action. I'm sorry, folks, that, you need the council opinion, but the council opinion would be subjective because we don't know the intent. If we have Micah and other folks that are deeply involved in the ICC rulemaking process, if they can help with something and we can track it back and figure out, okay, this is why it was adopted, then that will be a real opinion and real interpretation. So I'm going to put my head back there.
Excellent. Thanks, Stoyan. Go ahead, Roger.
Well, I was just going to say, I appreciate having the commentary there and it's helpful, but I went back to the code and I think the question from listening to Darren, the real question is structural elements, which, by the way, if people aren't aware, I am I am the structural representative on SBCC. And I kind of agree with Darren's suggestion that, the primary structure, it's a significant larger deal if you have to take part of the primary structure down to do something that's projecting rather than an architectural cover or something. But when I read 3202.2 in the code, which I believe 3202 is encroachments above grade but below 8 feet, 3202.2 would allow projections of up to 12 inches for columns, pilasters, including bases and molding. That's the way I read 3202.2.2. In my opinion, after reading everything here that we've talked about, columns, pilasters, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say floor elements of the primary structure could potentially protrude 2 inches into or 12 inches, up to 12 inches into the right of way from 0 to 8 feet. So why would we not allow those to protrude up to 12 inches, up to 15 feet, but not projecting up to the 4 feet for the primary structure? That's kind of how I would interpret all of those code elements. I agree that it's limited to the primary. The primary structure is the difference between projections and not. Is it a primary structural element member? And I think that looking at 3202.2.2, those columns anyway are allowed to protrude up to 12 inches from 0 to 8 feet, according to that section. So we would also allow those to project up to 15 feet, obviously, if the column is there from 0 to 8, it's obviously going to go up above, but it wouldn't allow more than that. Anything more than the 12-inch projection below 15 feet would only be limited to awnings, canopies, marquees, signs, and architectural features, mechanical, not structural. That's the way I read it as my own personal opinion and reading of this. So again, speaking not as as a SBCC member on the BFP committee, but since we can't vote today.
Well, it looks like we all have our personal opinions about
it. Yeah, I think we do. Thanks, Roger, for that. I'm on the fence with the direction Roger's trying to go there. I listening to you, Darren, it sounded also like the question is more towards, could the floor, a projecting floor, be considered an architectural feature? And that answer is clearly no. And I think with what Roger's trying to do, would actually would stretch, in my opinion, what 32.2 addresses, and extending that to an exterior wall. And I'm not sure if we want to go down that slippery slope, in my opinion. but again, I'm struggling with the opinion. The question I think is one thing, but the opinion is almost something else. I mean, not even going to section 3202.3 when question 1, just asking the question, are features such as floors and exterior walls allowed to project into the public right of way? I mean, that answer right off the bat should be no. No, it does not. It's not an architectural feature. It's a floor, and floor is defined. I think that came up a minute ago. What is defined and what isn't defined? Floors are defined. And I think when it talks about floors and projecting floors, then you could have usable space underneath that projecting floor. And again, in my opinion, floors are not a projection, especially at a certain distance. Once it creates that usable space, and what's that distance? I don't know, a couple of feet maybe. But I think there's a lot more in this question that we're not getting to than what we're providing an answer for. And I think this opens the door for a lot more questions, because I think the answer is specific to, at least answer to number 1, is specific to architectural features, but that's not the question. Because a floor and an exterior wall, in my opinion, is not an exterior feature or not an architectural feature. It's part of the structure. But again, I could be swayed somewhat. I have other hands up, Tom, and then John.
Yeah, to me, it seems like when they did specify those things in the code, that they were kind of producing an intent there of what they intended. I mean, what keeps running through my head is that all of those things that are listed in there that are permissible are things that, let's just say, a truck going down the road, if it hit that, it's not going to take the building down. But then if there were a floor sticking out and a truck hit that going down the road, it could cause some pretty serious structural damage to the building that could cause, a twin tower situation in the worst case. So it seems like when they talk about all of these more or less superficial design elements that are protruding out, the intent is that they're not structural in any way. So that's the way I read it.
Building a little bit on what Stoyan said, and kind of addressing a little bit, Roger, your point. Dustin, could you go back to the commentary and scroll down to the figure 3202.2.1? Yeah, that one. No, that one right there. Scroll up a little bit so you can see the whole thing. Here you go. Interestingly, one of the things they do here is add commentary to the commentary. They've said these are ornamental columns or pilasters in there, which I would agree would be an architectural feature. I would probably agree that, yeah, we don't want to start calling, structural columns, real structural columns, or floors. But even though floors, I still think you could argue what's a floor in some cases. But yeah. Anyway, just again, this is ICC's opinion, or a staff person on ICC, their opinion, and they've added this little ornamental thing that's not even in the text of the commentary. So it does get a little confusing. It's really hard to figure out what's really intended. But I would not call anything truly structural. And there's going to be secondary structure and all that other stuff, but I probably would not call those architectural features.
So,
Go ahead, Roger. Sorry.
yeah, I didn't know if I was next. So you all have convinced me, and I've changed my mind, which again tells me it's who knows. But I also, I guess, I want to, so let's talk about what we are saying between 0 and 8 feet and 0 and 15 feet. if the structure is the stud wall, and let's even say it's a plywood shear wall. So from the face of the plywood shear wall, if that was right on the property line or the right of way line, and then you have brick veneer or something else, whatever the architectural finish is, are you suggesting that the code would allow that to project that's less than 12 inches? Or, let's say whatever makes up the exterior wall insulation and brick or whatever, that is, a 6-inch width, can that be over the property line? But the primary structure has to be inside. I guess I'm asking that question, and I'm kind of fine with, now I got to go back to whichever answers, one or two. I think option one is kind of there's no projections below until you get up above 15 feet. I guess I'm asking John, or, where is that line between 0 and 15 feet? What's okay and what's not okay, or do we not know?
Micah, do you want me to respond before Todd and Darren, they got their hands up?
I think that's okay, since he directed a question at you, John. That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, Roger, I would say that anything that constitutes part of the building envelope, ordinarily, that's what we would say, would have to stay within the property lines, which to me includes the right of way, the line at the right of way. So theoretically, you could not put your studs right on the property line and then start attaching your finishes on top of that.
I agree, and I will let Todd go now. Thank you, John.
Yeah, I've evolved over this conversation, so thank you. I think I'm a little, when I do look at 3202.3.3, I don't understand where it makes a distinction between architectural and structural. So I think that's just not dealt with, quite frankly, here. So I don't know what, below 15 or 8 and 15 feet, but I think above 15 feet, I don't think we can say a hard no, because I think the code doesn't address it. I think it does allow it. Am I understanding this correctly? This is an open question.
Are you asking in general or asking specific folks to answer that?
No, that's the one area I need just a little help with. I think that seems very clear to me that encroachments are allowed above 15 feet, which means that the IBC does not limit them. They're limited by something else, development code, whatever it might be.
Okay. For me, I think that would have to come down to what you define a projection as. But well, maybe John will answer, has his hand to that. But if I don't want to skip over Darren, if you have some thoughts on Todd's question.
Thanks. Yeah, I do. And actually, something that kind of dawned on me is we're talking about like primarily the discussion is about structural. So we're looking at architectural elements that can be removed versus floor and the structure projecting out. But as soon as you have a floor that projects out, you're also going to allow for electrical, plumbing, and mechanical elements too that would be in that floor system or in the wall that projects out over the public right of way. So then at that point, it's not just the building, but it's also those other elements that are exposed at this point. So that really further drives the point home for me. And my understanding of this is that, the floor, I don't think the floor should be projecting beyond the property line below 8 feet for all those other reasons beyond just the structural part.
Okay, thanks, Darren. John?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Todd, I forgot your question, but I was gonna say that.
I think maybe, John, just frame it quickly. I think 2303.2 is very clear that it is allowed, that
Oh, yeah.
and
Okay.
there's no distinction, right? It's just simply encroachments. There's no distinction
Yeah.
about features or architecture or anything, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, the whole
structures
section,
included.
yeah, the whole section 3202.3 is about encroachments. It does not specific to projections, which kind of adds the confusion. And I suspect some of that is, shall I say, carelessness in code development. It's because we don't know. Again, it's making it much more ambiguous. You know, people, when they write these things, someone asked the question one time, why did they name those, just those particular elements? Well, usually, and I know from personal experience, where you write something that is addressing a problem that you've got and the things that you've seen, you're not picturing these other things. So you write the code section around kind of solving this one problem, but then someone comes by and says, oh, what about this? And oh, I didn't think about that. That wasn't really the intent. And then you start arguing about that. But above 15 feet, I think the code doesn't regulate it. I think that's pretty clear. Now, again, in Seattle, we didn't have a problem with that because you know, our transportation department said kind of regulated everything up, you know, that from ground to sky or and even below, right? So we didn't have to worry about that so much. We kind of deferred to them. Darren, just as a thought, though, you know, you can have exterior elements that you talked about too, on about, you know, about they allow balconies, for instance. And you could run electrical out there too, and things like that. Most people don't, but you know, it's possible too also. So I'm not certain that's the best argument, but you know, again, I think the idea is again, yeah, you want it's for the benefit of the folks maintaining the right of way. Someone else mentioned, you know, you don't want to have to bring a truck in and then start tearing down pieces off the building in order to do maintenance on the right of way. I think Seattle used like 14 feet, as I recall, as clearance for most trucks to get under in other circumstances, in the alleyways, things like that. You know, that just throwing some of that out there. I think you know, if the SBCC is going to start opining on base code, you know, model code, yeah, that one, well, that question's a different question, but I guess I would tend to err on saying that let's keep it on the conservative side. And you know, again, this is an opinion, and you know, other building officials are not bound by it.
Sorry, I'm muted. Thanks, John. Sean, sorry.
Hey, yeah. So as this discussion progresses, I'm just thinking about this section, encroachments. If you read, you know, the beginning of this section, it starts about below grade encroachments. Then you have now, you know, above grade within 8 feet, and then between 8 and 15, and then 15. But if you look where it starts below grade, structural supports are allowed to project at 12 inches beyond the lot line. And I think the intent, if there were allowances of other structural support, they would note that in these other sections, but they don't. They talk about the vaults or other enclosed spaces, areaways, and then the next one is encroachments above grade and below 8 feet in height, which is very specific to those, you know, architectural features such as steps, pediments, you know, like architectural features. So if your shear wall line is built at the property line, the exterior wall components, such as brickwork, lintels, stuff like that, are allowed to project over. And then it goes into architectural feature, or sorry, then it goes into awnings, and then encroachments 8 feet or more above grade. So it's almost a gradual, it's like an evolution of the building, starting from the structural standpoint below grade. As you work your way up through the building, it's telling us which elements, which features are allowable beyond that property line. Does anyone else see that kind of? I mean, does that make sense?
I would like to comment that I think using the term property line versus right of way, the edge of the right of way confuses it. Like, so when we look at the commentary on 3201.1 scope, applies only to encroachments on the public right of way, not lot lines or property lines.
Right, I guess I should have said lot lines, because at the very end of that, it says beyond the street lot line. As far as those projections, not more than
Right.
12 inches.
And I think that right there charges a lot of the way I feel about, some of it is, is whether we're talking about a jurisdiction owned right of way, or it's a easement onto a piece of property that establishes the right of way. And I just wanted to kind of point that one out.
Okay, thanks, Dustin, and yeah, I'm struggling a little bit with that, Sean. I do agree with you, and I see that's how the code goes, and my item that I'm still stuck on in there is nothing in those sections as you progress indicates floor. So that's still gonna be my argument. So, okay, Roger, go ahead, please. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Well, Micah, my comment is and again, I'm wondering if we want to offer opinion, because as I read it, I go back and forth. But your comment, Micah, about floors, I would significantly argue with you that a balcony, which is allowed to project, is primary structure. There is a primary structure for the balcony. And, maybe somebody else knows more than me, is that area that it's not building area, but is it rentable area? Is it, I know that I think developers rent it as area. I don't know. I am on the periphery on those conversations, but a balcony, which is allowed in 3202.3.2 to project, there's primary structure for the balcony. It's designed for a live load per the code. It has to be fireproofed. There are I don't remember what all they are, but that it has to be protected from a fire perspective. So the direction that we've been heading in this conversation, that primary structure has to be back and can't be projected, and John, even I kind of like John arriving at the envelope idea, that's kind of the line. But now I look at balconies, which are allowed, and that's primary structure, that's fire rated structure, it's designed for live load per the code. So I'm leaning towards saying we don't want to offer opinion and push it back on ICC. I don't know.
Thanks, Roger. Good points, good questions. Darren?
I agree that it's designed for live loads, but the dead load of it is only the weight of the balcony. So the dead load of a floor that's projecting out would be supporting walls up above it. So that would be, the difference there, in my opinion of that. And then the dead load could be, 3 floors of 3 stories of wall up above it. So I would make that distinction there. And that there is the actual picture of the building that drove the question there. And then this lower picture is a building that the designer from the upper building said, well, you allowed it to happen here, so why can't I do it on my building? So in the lower building, the floor projects out at 11 feet above finished grade, and it projects out for 2 feet beyond the lot line. The main floor is actually set in 2 feet from the lot line. So it's not right up against the public right of way, but then the upper floor, half of that projects out into the public right of way. And he's proposing a very similar thing on the building above, but they're at 13 feet to the underside of those shaded elements there, which is part of, on the right side of each one of those is a balcony, but the left side is actual floor area that is, interior to the building. So that bottom floor that's closest to the sidewalk is part of the structural floor projecting out beyond the lower wall.
Thanks for that info.
I just
Audrey's not-
I just wanted to respond. I mean, your assumption, Darren, that the balcony only supports its own dead load is not always the case. If we have a post out at the corner, you know, whether that goes all the way down, you could design something, you know, a steel cantilever at the lowest level and then do posts on the balconies above. So it's not always going to be
Right.
the case. So
Yeah. And that's where I'm looking for the clarification too, is it,
yeah,
was it supporting, if the balcony is only supporting its own weight and the live load, then I don't have a problem with it projecting over the public right of way, because it seems to kind of clearly allow that 3202 or 3202.3. So it's just whether it's supporting a larger dead load of the building above. That's where my concern is.
Hey, Todd.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm leaning towards, you know, Roger's point of not taking a strong opinion on this because, one, I think it's a lot of these concerns are more should be local jurisdictions and development code, or other you know, local agencies. But two, I don't think we really need to get into this architectural versus structural. I don't think that that's the real question here. Again, going back to 3202.3.3, I don't think we can say no, a hard no, because encroachments are allowed, and I don't think that speaks to any distinction between structural or non-structural. But on the structural part, again, I'm just going to stand by that. As a structural engineer, is looking at this. A wall is structural. It is dealing with autoplane loads, at least at the very minimum. It's supporting a window, same. It's taking structural loads, and then obviously that's primary. I mean that, and then anything else is still structural. Anything hanging off a building is still requires, you know, structure. So I don't like going down that pathway of making the distinction necessarily to come to an overall opinion. Below 8 feet, if that's really the question, I think it's fairly clear what the building code teaches, but again, I don't think that helps on the development code side. I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that the answer is no on 1 and 2.
All right. Thanks, Todd. Any additional thoughts or discussion? All right.
I would like to say thank you for taking this question and spending so much time discussing it. And it's been very good feedback for us, and it's been very helpful, although we didn't come to a definite conclusion at this point, but thank you anyway. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Sean. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for bringing it. It's very informative.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, guys.
At this point, unfortunately, I don't, I'm not hearing a solution or even recommendations on answers, since it seems we're all over the map. And there's a lot of underlying implications that that probably would not be beneficial for us to provide an interpretation or an opinion on this, excuse me. However, I don't know where we should go with this. I guess at this point, we don't have an opinion, at least a clear opinion that we could put down on paper, and we don't have a recommendation that we would move forward to the SBCC. And it seems like we would need either further discussion or further time with a tag or something on this. I don't really have an answer. I see that John unmuted. If you wanted to provide some thoughts, that'd be great.
I was going to say you don't have a quorum either, so you can't take action anyway.
I don't have a quorum either, but yeah, that's correct. We were talking about maybe making some type of maybe modifications and recommendation to the SBCC for them to decide on. But I think previously we had, you know, when this first came up, we were struggling to even determine if we should make or provide opinions on base code or model code language. And maybe this is the reason, one of the reasons I suggested no, but here we are. Go ahead, Todd, you have your hand up, and then Sean.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we've also discussed, this is one where it's a forum to have this kind of discussion, but also to raise it to the ICC now. Well, any individual, proponent or question, or, in this case, someone asking, the applicant asked the question could bring it to ICC. I would like to consider that we raise this to an ICC, to get more feedback from at that level, it's formal or not.
So.
And then if I could chime in, I think that's an awesome answer. We will maybe send in an interp to ICC. I think everyone has brought up enough, enough points to the topic that we'll just interpret it locally, discuss it with our, public works counterparts, and kind of, get some cohesion, some agreement with them, and then just kind of proceed down that path until we hear further from ICC, and then at that point we can share that with the rest of the group.
Hey, thanks, Todd. Sorry, Sean. I was muted. Thank you, Todd, for your input, and I didn't ignore it. I was just muted, unfortunately. And Roger, do you have something else to add? I did see your hand up, but it went down. Don't want to overlook you.
No, I think I agree with both Todd and Sean. It's our opinion is we don't have an opinion. Our opinion would be ask ICC as an official, but I think the conversations we've had are enough, or as far as we've taken it as far as we can go is what I think. So
Excellent. Thanks, Roger. I can agree with that. I don't know if this has happened before where we haven't been able to formulate an opinion, or at least a complete one that we would publish. So very good question, Sean, and thanks for the City of Bellingham folks for being here and discussing this thoroughly. Hopefully you'll be able to come to some resolution in your individual jurisdiction. I do think that each jurisdiction would still interpret this differently as well, even if an opinion was published by ICC just based on local conditions. So thank you for your time. And with that, I believe we will close out this topic on our agenda and move on to the next bullet pointed item. And that is a 2021 Wildland Urban Interface Code opinion. And if we could please bring that up, I appreciate it. And I still don't think we have a quorum, by the way, just for verification.
For some reason, it's taken me a while to open up a document.
That's
here,
okay.
So bear with me. So while I'm waiting on it to open up, I had the town of Woodway inquire with me how they're supposed to apply the wildland urban interface and intermix area within their jurisdiction. In distilling their question, I have it as, how is a jurisdiction supposed to use the DNR maps and the definition of wildland urban interface / intermix area to enforce the 2021 WUI code? In there for my answer, we've talked with Micah a little bit about this one outside of this group, and what I have for this jurisdiction is that the definition of the wildland the wildland urban interface area was amended in our WAC to be wildland urban interface / intermix area. The text of that definition remains the same as the model code definition. And with discussion, the intent was to amend the definition and have that meaning apply throughout the entire code, kind of similar to how we amended out the R4 occupancy, but nowhere else in the code where the change is made so that was indicated to be deleted. So in the WUI code, in specifically section 501.4 through 501.8, section 502 and 503, the definition word of wildland urban interface area was not changed in our amendments. And so currently it still reads wildland urban interface area. Well, the DNR maps have a wildland urban interface designation and an intermix designation, the red and the yellow sections. And so if I was reading and having a question without having talked to Micah about how this was supposed to apply, one might interpret that if you have intermix area, the requirements where it specifically says wildland urban interface would not apply to your construction areas. And so since the intent was to apply it everywhere where that definition exists, that is the answer to the question I have posed here, is that the definition should be changed code wide. And I'll turn it over to Micah.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask if there was anyone here from the city or town of Woodway that may want to have some input before we start discussion.
I do not see my communicator from there. He also represents another small jurisdiction. He's running double duties down there.
Okay. Perfect. Well, then I'll open it up. I appreciate you putting this opinion together, Dustin. I know that we had talked about coming back with some additional questions or providing more information. I do think that we need to change the last sentence. And by the way, I agree with most of this opinion, since that was our intent with the definition, that interface and intermix are one and the same when it comes to the application of the requirements of the Wildland Urban Interface Code. And we were trying to clarify that, and that was the intent, throughout this code, that wherever it says interface or intermix and you fall into one of those zones, that the requirements of this code apply. And that is one change I want to make in the document here, where it indicates that only sections 501.4 through 501.8, 502, and 503 would apply in both interface and intermix. Actually, if you're in an interface or intermix area, the entire requirements of the Wildland Urban Interface Code would apply. And that is stated in our amendment, section 301.2 of the Wildland Urban Interface Code. It says where a structure is proposed to be constructed in areas designated by the Washington WUI map as wildland urban interface or intermix, the construction shall apply with the provisions of this code. So the entire code applies if you fall into one of those categories, not just those specific sections in the opinion. So I'd like to clarify or clean that up if possible. And that's my input, and I open the floor to BFP committee members and the public. If there's any comments.
I was going to ask Michael real quick, do you like that last sentence as I have drafted here? It says WAC 55 section 301.2 indicates that the entire WUI code would apply in both interface and intermix areas shown on DNR maps.
I think that's close enough. You could probably not put entire WUI code. You could just put WUI code.
Gotcha.
Be my, shorter's better for me always. Thanks. Any thoughts?
Need
Again,
to
we can
add
have
the
different
word.
interpretations. Go ahead, John.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, I think it would help to have a little bit more than just the WUI code, because that's the whole question, right? How much of it does apply? And I think it would actually, after thinking about it a little bit for the couple seconds here, that entire probably would be clearer.
So as he's pointing out, where a structure is proposed to be constructed in an area designated by the WUI map as wildland urban interface or intermix, the construction shall comply with the provisions of this code. And I did have it distilled down to those specific sections because it seemed to be those were the sections of ignition resistant construction that the questioner was most concerned with.
Go ahead, Roger. I think, Tom, you had some input as well, even though I didn't see your hand there. I apologize, but go ahead, Roger, and then Tom.
I just like I like the way Dustin has it now. I mean, it directs you directly to that sentence, and that's where we're answering their question. We're sending go directly to 3102, which indicates, and if anything, that I would almost put in the language that the WUI code would apply. You may look exactly what 301.2 says, how it's worded in 301.2. But just tell them according to that, it would apply to both interface and intermix areas. I mean, it's pretty straightforward to me. When you showed the WAC language there, that's the answer. So.
Okay, thanks, Roger. Tom, please, if you had something, feel free to jump in.
I had nothing else. Yeah, no, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anybody else would like to provide input? Go ahead, Roger.
I would
sorry.
just say the construction shall comply with the provisions of this code. Or the construction shall apply with provisions of the WUI code. That can be the second part of that sentence in your answer.
Okay.
Indicates that the WUI would apply to both and construction shall comply with provisions of this code. Maybe add that construction shall comply to the provisions of this code at the end of that sentence. Yeah. I mean, that seems to be pretty straightforward to me, and I would propose that we approve that, except we don't have quorum, so.
Instead of having it of this code would it be advisable to put in with the provisions of the WUI code?
Probably, yeah.
I would say if you're quoting it, though, you should leave it as is.
Okay.
Okay.
Grammatical accuracy.
Yeah.
But if you're not quoting it, then yes, you could change it. But if you're directly quoting it, I would say leave it alone.
I agree.
Okay.
Thank you, Roger. Anyone else will provide input or feedback?
I'll just say that I'll save this as a draft, and I do believe this will come up in our Stoyan, maybe correct me if we're this will probably come up in a staff report to the council this Friday. You're muted, Stoyan.
I was going to ask the council members that are attending this meeting, it's not part of the agenda because the assumption was we will have a BFP committee meeting, and we will have a decision, but currently I don't know how to proceed with it. Probably other business.
Okay. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, again, not being real clear on the process here. Would you run this past the town of Woodway first to see if this actually answers their question? I'm
So
not entirely
I would,
convinced it does, but based on other conversations, but yeah.
so I had pretty much put this back to them. The language I used in this before we made the amendments here was a direct copy paste from an email I'd already sent back out to them. Their response was that, you know, they don't enforce by intention or the intent of the code. I could pull up the email and read verbatim, but they were looking for something more substantial from the code council. Not saying, you know, that the intent of the amendment was to change that definition everywhere and make you know, if you have the interface or intermix area in your jurisdiction, that you could, you know, apply the WUI code as needed. And they were looking for something more official from the council to, I guess, take to their city council, I believe. But I'm more than happy to run it by them.
The problem is that the next regular council meeting is in September. And we may need a special meeting or even two special meetings because of other issues, but I don't know how I can add this to a special meeting. We've used this option in the past, introducing an opinion under other business, but I'm not sure if everybody will agree with that. So consider my statements as questions and, wondering what to do, what's the better option.
Thanks, Dorian. Roger?
Yeah, at our last, I think that we have agreed that it is our responsibility as the SBCC to provide opinions when asked. I would hate to, because we don't have a quorum, require that we push off getting our answers out until September. So I think, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, and I'm not going to be at the meeting on Friday, but as other business, this one seems pretty straightforward. We could present this as the BFP talked about it, and this is what we came up with, and get the State Building Code Council to approve, yes, this is an acceptable opinion to send back. And Dustin, if you can contact them prior to Friday and say, here's what we came up with, and then there maybe can be some discussions about modifying it at the council meeting, but I think it should be part of the full council meeting business, since the BFP committee couldn't get a quorum. So that the proponents or the people asking the question don't have to wait 4 months to get an answer.
Thanks, Roger. I can agree that the council needs to take some type of action. I'm okay with the language. Sorry, it points to a section that tells them what to do, and even if the definitions aren't modified throughout the code, which doesn't always happen in every code, so I'm not sure how they have concerns with that when there's an explicit amendment that states that it shall apply.
We can post it on the website, and Dustin will send it to the council members. And if Micah is okay with it, I think it will be faster.
Go ahead, Tom, and then Andrew.
Yeah, I agree that maybe a closing statement, to clarify this code would be in order there, where you say that, so therefore the WUI code applies.
Thanks for that input, Tom. Andrea, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for staff. Is there an opportunity to perhaps add a meeting between this last meeting this Friday and one before the meeting in September, in case of the event that there are more requests for interpretations on code language? I know that would be widely beneficial for a few of the things that we have kind of going out there, and we would love to have some clarification before the July 1 implementation date.
Is it related to? Sorry, Andrea, I got distracted. Is it related to a current request, or you're planning to submit a new one?
No, it would be, we're kind of working with a few jurisdictions on some questions that they have and that we have. And so I just wanted to know if I were to submit that after Friday, I guess the timeline and getting a response.
The issue with the council meetings in the summer was that it's difficult to, because of the summer season and vacations, and it is difficult to establish the quorum. This is why we didn't have a council meeting scheduled for June July and August, and instead of having meetings every month, we have meetings scheduled for 6 hours. We didn't expect that we'll have something that important during the first year of the code adoption cycle. We've never had that many requests, different requests, not only code opinions. So to me, I can try and schedule a special meeting, and we will need one anyway for the R4 adoption. We can do our best, but I can't guarantee that we will have the quorum.
Yeah, no worries. I understand. It would be awesome to have you do your best in making sure that we can get some of these answers resolved before the July 1 date. Thank you so much.
Well, Andrea, I'd like to follow up just a little bit. If we may not be able to have a quorum and get you an official council opinion, but you're always welcome to reach out to the staff and ask the questions, and we can give you the staff interpretation. And if need to be, we can always follow up with more official stuff a little bit later. And like Stoyan said, if we have the special meeting, we can always add it to that agenda as it comes up.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Andrea, and the input from staff. So reading this a few more times, I do have a few other recommended modifications. We have a lot of sentences in here that I think can be combined. If we go up to where you are in bold, where the wildland urban interface intermix area, I would change that to have a comma and say, however, the text of the definition remains the same as the model code. And then I would remove the sentence that says the intent was to amend the definition throughout the entire code. I think we still get there with a clear answer. It talks about the definition's the same. The subsequent sections of the WUI code were not changed, but it gives you the section that states that for both that it applies. And the answer is the last sentence that Tom added is that the WUI code applies to both interface and intermix areas depicted on the DNR map. I think that's clear enough. That's my opinion. Other folks can chime in. All right. Does that work for you, Roger? I know you had some input in, Tom. Get us there. Okay.
Yeah, fine with me.
Okay. I think with that story, and this would be the BFP's recommended version. However, we don't have a quorum for a vote.
Well, we can't say it's a BFP recommended version. We will say it was discussed and it's the staff draft based on the opinions shared during this meeting. Does it sound good?
Sounds great. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for your editing, Dustin, and input from everyone on the call. All right, let's move into the last bullet point of item number 4. And it's also an opinion request for IRC section 330.7 and fire apparatus.
Yeah, so
Roads?
while we're waiting on this to upload, City of Sumner asked the question for adult family homes. The requirement of IRC amendment 330.7 indicates that all adult family homes are required to have a fire apparatus road. Some of the background is in RCW 19.27.060 section B number 5. No provisions of the Uniform Fire Code concerning roadways shall be part of the state building code, but that doesn't prevent local jurisdictions from adopting standards for their street, road, or access standards. The particular of this one is I guess they have a project that is going to be on a landlocked property that is served only by an easement. And their question is, even in this scenario, does an adult family home require the fire apparatus access road? The answer I have in here for this one is yes. The section 330.7 doesn't have any exceptions or anything like that. Every adult family home must be served by a fire apparatus access road, even if landlocked and served only by an easement. I quote the RCW saying that they're allowed to adopt some sections for their fire apparatus access roads. And I said, thus the fire apparatus access road that is required must conform to the locally adopted standards for such roads.
Thanks, Dustin. Just want to ask if anyone in the city of Sumner is on the call to provide any additional input.
I do not have any of those folks online with us.
Okay, we'll open the floor for discussion. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just have a question. Is it was this question for within the city limits, or was it broader than that? You know, I mean, let's just say I'm a mountain cabin or something. You know, how would that apply to this statement where it'd be kind of impossible to maybe develop a road that you could get a fire truck through, maybe wildland fire truck, or, you know, something that's more suitable for that type of need?
Well, I would say that this is for within their city limits and jurisdiction only. The little bit of background, they adopted 3 sections of the IFC to describe their access roads. And I believe that that was adopted by their public works department, not by their building department. Give me 1 second to pull up their email on this one. So they're the city of Sumner, I got this from George Nail, their building official. And they adopted IFC sections 503.2.1 for dimensions, 503.2.4 for turning radius, and 503.2.5 for dead ends. And it says that our municipal code doesn't address this other than the adoption of sections from the IFC as follows. And so I don't know if within their town they might have the you know, top of the mountain adult family home, but I would say that, you know, the reading of the code would still apply, and if they couldn't comply with that section, that they would likely not be allowed to have the adult family home at that location.
Okay. Any other thoughts or input? I'm still processing this one, Dustin. I apologize. I'm processing what you just said as well. Go ahead, Ken.
I think you need to clarify it, make it a little easier that you're only required to comply with the local authorities' requirements. Doesn't mean that they might not require fire apparatus access road. So I don't think that the answer is yes, every adult family home must be served by one, because locally they might not require it.
So I mean, it says shall be served by fire apparatus. I mean, I hear what you're saying. So I mean, I don't know. I think that would be up to the local jurisdiction on that one. If they don't have provisions for fire apparatus access roads, I don't know.
So as an AHJ, I have the ability to say, I'm not requiring a fire apparatus access road. And I might have something in lieu of.
But this particular jurisdiction does have standards for those roads.
But that's the whole thing, is that they're asking a generic question. You're stating a case for just the city of Sumner. The question was, is the intent that all adult family homes have to have the fire apparatus access road? And the answer should be yes, complying with the local adopted standards.
That's kind of what I have at the end.
But I don't know if I'd want to put in the landlocked, served only by an easement, all.
So I agree with where Ken's going with this. This is, I think, is what Ken is indicating, is this is not a yes answer. When you look at the first, the sentence, it says, is it to indicate that every adult family home is intended to have an approved apparatus access road for land, even served by an easement, blah, blah, blah. Ken's answer is it depends. And it should have an adult family served by an apparatus access road and water supply, meaning the IFC. And the IFC then states in 503 that those shall be provided and maintained in accordance with locally adopted standards. So I get where you're going, Ken. It's not a yes or no answer. It's we need to point to the local adoption of street, road, and access standards, because if there are none, or there is no apparatus access required, then the answer is technically no. You don't have to provide the apparatus access road to the adult family home. So I get where you're going. The answer is not really yes, but it's not really no, and it's it depends. John might like that, right? It depends. I don't know. I'm on the fence, so that's why I'm processing this one. This one's it's a very good question, and it's almost circular between the codes and the RCW. Because this says it shall be served by something, but that something is per the IFC, but the only thing in the IFC is per the locally adopted standard. So yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Roger. All over my head.
The question, so their first sentence is a statement, not a question. The second sentence is they are asking for us to define the intent. And I kind of like the intent of it is that everyone would have a fire access road, or the local jurisdiction would approve something, or if that was not the case, then the local jurisdiction would have, under whatever the fire code is, the ability to ask for and require some other method of giving additional safety. That is the intent. I mean, that's the way I read from Ken's definition. They're asking us to clarify the intent, and I think that is the intent, that everyone does. But if it's not able to, then the local jurisdiction has the ability to require additional safety measures of some sort.
I see where you're going with that. I can agree with that, Roger. They're asking about the intent, and the intent is to provide an apparatus access road that meets locally adopted standards. So if there is none, then there's no standard.
Yeah.
So you could probably strike the first part of that. It depends part, and I'll go with what Roger's talking about to answer the intent.
It is the intent of section R 330.7 to require fire apparatus. And this is a Washington State amendment, right? So we
Yes.
do need to provide clarification on the intent. And I wasn't there when it was passed, but I think Ken's description seems appropriate to me. With local jurisdiction has the ability to require alternative provisions, not provide. In the case where local fire apparatus access roads are not.
Well,
I don't know. I
but-
mean, maybe we're getting too specific there.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, Roger. Let's have John talk and go.
Yeah,
from there. We'll have some more.
I think it might be easier to just say the local jurisdiction can adopt the standards to which the roads are built, right? And that just leaves it wide open. It's whatever standards the jurisdiction has. If they don't have any, then they don't have any.
So I think, John, if I'm hearing you correct, and Roger, maybe you're saying the same thing, is that the intent is to have the locally adopted standards apply for the fire apparatus access to an adult family home.
So would it be like
It's-
the local jurisdiction has the responsibility to adopt their
I
own?
wouldn't even say
standards?
that.
No.
Nope. I would just say the intent is to have the locally adopted street, road, and access standards apply for access to adult family homes.
Or
Maybe that's too much.
or just say the access must comply with locally adopted standards, which could be none.
Well,
We don't have to say it could be none, but just say it comply with locally adopted standards.
If any.
can I take a step even farther back, John? I mean, the title is fire apparatus access roads and water supply for fire protection. So is the intent of that section to make sure that we have proper fire protection for adult family homes?
But the question is their question is only about the access.
Locally adopted.
No, and water supplies.
No,
Well, that's what
that's
the
not,
section refers to, but their only question was about
Oh.
access roads.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
someone said locally adopted standards, that would be fine too. Yeah. Rather than adopted local standards, locally adopted standards, either way.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna throw a wrench in this, but again, I like short and sweet. I think we can combine those two sentences to where we don't have to repeat fire apparatus access. The intent of section R 330.7 is to require fire apparatus access roads that comply with the locally adopted standards. I like simple, but again, maybe that's too simple. And I didn't mean for you to erase the entire stuff.
Right, I can go back if we need to.
I'm good with that.
Do you have any other thoughts, John? Well, to jump in on that.
Oh, that's fine.
And how about you, Ken? Does that meet the point that you brought up?
I'm on another team's call, sorry, so I haven't been listening. Sorry
You're
about that.
fired. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Thanks, Ken. That's fine. All right, any thoughts or additional thoughts from anyone, including members of the public? We are allowed to take public comment on this, so. Guess we did with John, but yes. Okay. Stoyan, I think we'll pass this along the same way we did the previous one. There's no objections from the committee.
This is cool, but I wanna clarify, I'm sure you know, but the council members may or may not take action under other business, so we will add the documents, we'll send it, all documents to council members, but we can't guarantee that something is going to happen.
Okay. I'll be there Friday and try to make a motion.
I
You know
know
folks need to get this stuff done. Excellent. All right. With that, I think that wraps up item 4 on the agenda. I believe that we would move on to item 6, considering we completed item 5. And we'll let Dustin's screen catch up. And
So Stoyan, would you like me to bring up the proposal? Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, so Ken might want to.
this agenda, let me clarify something. This agenda item is we will need a formal decision by the BFP committee. I mean, it was discussed several times. I know Ken is still upset with me, but if there is not a formal decision by the BFP, we can introduce it. I think it's in the agenda for tomorrow, right, Dustin?
I believe so.
So we can introduce it as is without any BFP recommendation because we don't have the quorum. If the BFP committee members want to unofficially discuss it, that's okay too. It's up to them. But this is an important item that we were really expecting a BFP recommendation. So how it will be introduced to the council tomorrow, we'll say we don't have a BFP recommendation, and the council can skip the BFP recommendation, or the council can refer back to the BFP. I don't know. These are two options that I see.
okay. And I sure hope you mean council meeting on Friday. If not, my schedule's all messed up.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
We don't need another one tomorrow.
I'd assume Ken would probably want to chat on this one.
Yeah, my feelings are right now. I don't want to spend another hour and 10 minutes going through this like I did at the tag meeting. I know Micah was involved with the small changes that were made to it. And if right now, if the council can't act on this Friday for an off-cycle rule, then my recommendation is, because not having a quorum, it is so important that I think it reaches the emergency rule. And then if it reaches the emergency rule, then do we have to go back to the BFP and tag, or can it just be a council decision?
I didn't say the council cannot act on it. The council can.
Then okay, so the council, but does it have to get approved by BFP to go forward?
The council sets the procedures, and the standard procedure is it gets from the technical advisory group to the BFP committee and to the council meeting. We have a president here. We didn't have a quorum at 2 consecutive BFP committee meetings.
Exactly.
So
this public process has just been extremely frustrating. We did all of the work. We put all the time into this, and due to 2 lack of quorums, and now the procedures through the council, this has a good chance of not happening again on Friday. And then we have to have another BFP meeting, which is it even scheduled right now?
Well, everything is free talking now. We can't predict what the council will do. I can assume the council will take this fact into consideration and we'll have a vote on it, but I can't guarantee that.
Okay, and sorry, I missed item 5. Is this the same thing that's happening at item 5?
Item 5, no, item 5 was just an introduction. Item 5 didn't need a vote.
So, okay, so that was just your staff report for
It
ongoing
was just
off-cycle
staff
rules.
report where we are.
Okay. All right, well, it's whatever I guess the public wants and the non-quorum members of the BFP regarding this. If you have any specific questions on the proposed document, I'll do my best to answer them.
So if I may, can I understand your frustration? And I think,
It's been going on since November.
yeah, so the only options in front of us, if I am not mistaken, at the tag meeting, this was approved unanimously. Is that correct? If I remember right? I was there,
Yes.
I believe. So because we don't have a quorum, and Stoyan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we can, as a BFP committee, tell them that it was discussed and if that the members of the BFP committee today were in agreement to move forward, but we didn't have a quorum, and present that case to the full council, because it is on the agenda, right, for the full council. I think that's, yeah, on Friday. So I can't imagine that the full council would not vote one way or the other, and particularly since it was unanimously approved by the tag. And I would I was on the tag, I would vote for approving this. So at least one member of the BFP today supports it, and we can see if other members, but we just can't have an official approval. I can't see where the full council would not act on it, particularly since we know that it's been hanging out there, and whoever introduces it, whether it's Micah or Stoyan, that can state that the last two BFPs did not have a quorum. That's why we're asking the council to go ahead and make the official, to move it forward officially. So I don't have any questions about it. I know I was at the last meeting. I think you had great explanations for everything. Certainly you've got all of the yellow comments in there, that answer folks' questions. So I think it's a very well put together explanation and changes, and I fully support the whole thing. So
I very much appreciate your comments, Roger. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Roger. So I was part of the tag too, and I would support moving this forward. I did have one question. So we're just readopting the 2018 emergency rule, and are we having or that's at least on the agenda to readopt the 2018 for this item as an emergency rule, but is that going to be also included in the off-cycle rule package if we move forward?
No, these are two different votes. So we will ask the council. Typically, we don't need a special approval by the council, but since we have a council meeting, we will ask the council to direct staff to refile the emergency rule that was filed for the 2018 International Fire Code. And we will ask the council to vote to direct staff to file the CR 102 for the text you see right here. And this will be for 2021 International Fire Code. So these are two different votes.
Okay. So what happens with the 2018 item after the emergency rule?
The 2018 item will be filed and will be filed with the expiration date, July 1st, until July 1st, 2023. Well, July 1st.
And then what's the plan for from July 1st on? For the 21
Thank you,
code?
Ken. I was just gonna ask, I'm like, it seems like we've got we have a gap in here.
No, well, we do. And we're trying to cover it, right? Because we will start working on this. Well, we are already working on this. And we also will ask the council to direct staff or allow staff to file another emergency in 2021 when the time comes.
So we got to file an emergency rule on May 25th for the 2018 code. We have to file another emergency rule on July 1st to cover the 2021 code while we complete work on this 2021 off-cycle rule.
Yes.
But I'm sorry, that's not on your agenda for Friday. You don't
It's not
show that.
required for the agenda on Friday for the 2021 code adoption effective date.
So how are you going to file something after July 1 without council approval?
The emergency for the emergency is related to the off-cycle rule for 2021.
So what
The
you're telling,
emergency-
so to make sure I understand. So the proposed emergency rule for the 2021 code will be the entire off-cycle rule, which we're seeing in front of us. It's not just going to be the same as the 2018 IFC.
When we discussed this the last time, I thought the agreement was that we will file the same emergency as it appears now in 2018 until we're able to complete this off-cycle rule.
Okay, so I'm still back to, when does council give their authority to staff to make that filing?
This
the
will happen on
2021.
Friday.
That's item number 7 on the agenda on Friday.
Yeah, all I see is 2018 IFC readopt the emergency rule. I don't see a 2021 IFC emergency rule.
I don't understand why you're digging into the details then. The emergency rule for 2021 is related to the off-cycle rule. We're working on them.
Okay.
The
So
code revisor's office, this is, let me say that. The code
no,
revisor-
it's clear now. All you have to do is add the terms emergency rule / off-cycle rule for 2021 IFC, and it's covered in your agenda. Because right now I'm only thinking it's just off-cycle rule, because the off-cycle rule is what we're seeing in front of us right now. It's not what you're going to be proposing, which is the same as the 2018 language in the 2021.
when we file, again, the code revisor's office, it doesn't make any difference between 2018 and 2021 international fire code. It's WAC 5154A. So now we are doing these exercises because we're trying to work around a rule, Administrative Procedures Act requirement and policies and procedures. The code revisor's office, we're trying to work it out, dealing with 2 different codes, 2018 and 2021. Again, it's unique in our situation because again, the code revisor's office doesn't recognize this as 2 different rules. It's one rule for them. So we'll make it work. We'll make it work.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Stoyan. So you do have 2 recommendations that this was what was approved at the tag unanimously and don't have any issues with it. And yeah, I'm not sure what we're seeing on the screen here. Is that
It's
the
just
current
the
agenda?
agenda.
Okay. I'm like, what are you looking at?
Can we, Micah, can we ask, I don't know how many, I don't know if Todd's still on, but how many members of the official members of the BFP support, even though it is not an official vote? Can we, I mean, I would like to relay to the full council my support for it here on the BF and as part of the BFP committee. And what I'd like to be able to say is unanimous support of the BFP committee members that were attending the meeting, even though we did not have a quorum, so we could not officially vote. Is there a path that we could get that?
Well, Roger, this is Todd. I think it's also maybe as simple as just, the three of us
Yeah.
stating that to the council, and it might have the same effect, right?
That's fine, except
Okay.
as I mentioned, I'm not going to be there on Friday, so.
Oh, I see. Okay. I will be your proxy, Roger.
Okay, thank you.
How dare you, Roger? You're gonna miss all the fun.
If you're comfortable with that, I'm happy to state that
Sure,
for you. Okay.
thank you.
All right, great. Anything else you want to add to this, Ken, or have questions, or members of the public that I know we didn't go through this document, and we're more than happy to go through some of this document. I know Ken said he didn't want to spend an hour and a half. I wouldn't allow him to go that long going through the document, but I don't want to close off discussion by any means. So if there are some folks that have questions, maybe about what this is, that hasn't had the chance or opportunity to attend previous meetings on this, or wasn't a part of working on this, we'd be happy to answer some questions. I know Ken would. I don't want to just say, hey, the BFP is good with this, move it forward. We do want to open this up for some type of discussion if necessary. So please jump in and ask questions, including members of the public. Thanks. Go ahead.
I just want to excuse myself. I need to leave for another meeting, but if you're not done, I'll be back in 10 minutes.
Thanks, Dwayne. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just have one question, just for clarity in my own mind here. On the very beginning of that, in the general section, it says revision of this chapter shall apply to energy systems used for generating energy. And I left out a couple of words there. And then the next sentence says, except for equipment associated with the generation of energy. And I'm just trying to figure out what the difference is between energy systems and equipment associated with the generation of energy in both cases.
I think you have to read that. Are you talking about the second sentence in the 12.1 scope?
The first and second sentence, yeah.
Okay, so the first one says it shall apply, and it gives all of those things.
Right.
And then the second one says it shall not apply, and it lists all of the things that is under the exclusive control of electric utility or lawfully designated agency. So it.
But then that was added to the first one too.
That is repeated. Yeah, it
So-
is, yeah, it is a repetitive scoping, yes.
But I guess my question still is, if we're talking about the generation of energy. In the first one, it says it applies for the generation or storing of energy. And the second one says it does not apply to equipment associated with the generation of energy. And I'm just trying to figure out what the difference is. I mean, because to me, and the way I understand it, in one sentence, it says it applies, and then this next sentence says it doesn't. To the generation of energy. There's other things involved in both sentences that are different, but the generation of energy is common in both of those, the way I read it.
So I do see what you're saying, but I think is what the indication is. One says shall apply to the generation of energy, and the other one shall apply or shall not apply to the equipment associated with the generation of the energy. Am I reading that right, Ken? Or someone else?
But it
There is
says
a difference.
Okay, so but in the first sentence, it says energy systems used for generation. And the other one says equipment associated with the generation.
so
So energy systems and equipment are different things.
Yeah, and I think why the second sentence is there, because it's talking about the associated equipment that is used by the electric utility. And I think the intent of that is there's certain equipment that they use that's under different jurisdiction than the fire code. I think that's why that second sentence is in there.
Okay, but the energy systems are different than equipment.
Yes, the energy systems they're referencing is more the storage type systems that this section applies to in 1206, 1207. That's my understanding of it. I think that's the difference. But again, I'm not the expert in the field on this.
Okay. Yeah, just to me, when I read it first, it just seemed like you were saying the same thing with regard to things associated with the generation of power. In one instance it applies, and then it just follows by saying it doesn't apply. And so I was just confused on that. I guess I still am, but if it makes sense in the industry and it's not ambiguous or confusing, then I'll yield to that. That's all I have.
Thanks, Tom. It's not the best code language, I can agree, but if it can indicate the industry understands, maybe we'll be okay. Anybody else have any comments on that or other sections? Go ahead, Roger.
As we've seen in the ICC, there's never a code language that is completely immune from other interpretations. So if nothing else, it gives us the opportunity to offer an opinion at some time in the future.
Oh, just what we look forward to. All right. I'm going to read it over and over, Tom. Now that you pointed that out, I'm going to have to spend a little more time processing it too. I think it reads correctly, but it is repetitive enough to be odd.
It's repetitive enough that Micah's going to want to simplify it.
That's right. I probably won't mess with it though. I know that the importance of this, and it's one of those things that we could eventually modify, which the reason we're behind the curve on this is just because technology moves so rapidly anyway. So I'm sure we'll see changes to this upcoming as we move forward. All right, I do want to keep the floor open for other folks to have input or questions. And if we need to scroll through some more of the document, it is rather long. There are some additions that, if need further explanation, we'd be happy to spend a little more time on that. I know we have a little time in the meeting and folks like to complete early, but again, I don't want to close off any discussion. All right. With that being said, I think we have some direction already, barring any language modifications to the first section. Just kidding. Okay, with that, Ken, I think you are done with that, and we will move that on with more or less a unanimous approval, at least a recommended approval without a vote by the BFP committee. Anything you want to add, Ken, before we close this item out?
Oh, I'm just praying we have a quorum on Friday.
Oh, we'll have a quorum Friday.
And we have enough time to get to everything.
Well, that may be a whole other topic there anyway, but
no,
we'll see how
I
that
just
goes.
thank you everybody, especially Roger for your kind words and Micah for your help at the tag. It's a proposal that industry has looked at. I mean, we had all of the industry people at the November meeting, and I purposely did not request them to attend all of the BFP meetings, because they had agreed to all of this language up front, and that's the reason it's in the 24 code, and that's the reason we're bringing it forward to the 21 code in Washington State. But if you would like, I can ask all of the leaders in the industry to show up for Friday if you really want for that extra support, and have more and more public comment if you guys think it's necessary. But that it was purposeful why they haven't been attending the last few meetings. They thought I could take the ball and just run with it, and it's so far it's been a slow moving target, but we're there. Thanks, everybody.
What I would
Go ahead,
not
Roger.
ask, what I would not ask for, Ken, is to have each member send an email to each SBCC council member. That
Note-
would not be
no-
beneficial.
Note taken.
No underlying meaning there at all. All right. Appreciate your time on that, Ken. And I don't know if we'd have enough time in the public comment section at the meeting to get to all the folks that they did attend. And I think that you're going to get this across the line here shortly. With that, well, I'm not on the right agenda. I have Friday's agenda open. Okay, that was item number 6, and that we just wrapped up. If there's no further comment on it, moving into item number 7 and other business, I will open the floor to both public comment for other business and council members, or excuse me, committee members. Seeing Todd with a head shake of nothing, and not hearing any other committee members or seeing any raised hands. So with that, I appreciate everybody's time and excuse me, input. And we wow, it must be time for me to stop talking. If you believe that. So with that, I appreciate everybody's time, and we will again be going over some of these topics on Friday's meeting at the full council. And I agree with Ken. I hope we have a quorum where we can get some votes on these items, since we can't seem to get a quorum for the BFP committee, unfortunately. But thanks for everybody's time. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you on Friday, hopefully. So meeting adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Micah. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks.